Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to a $1,000 gaming PC build. Let's get right into this with the CPU of the build. For the CPU, I went with the Intel Core i5-4670K. It's a Haswell series CPU. It's a quad-core CPU and it runs at 3.4 GHz. Now, this being a K-series CPU, you're also going to want to grab a Hyper 212 Evo with this CPU. That's about 20 to 30 bucks. The CPU itself is about 220 to 230. Now, it being a K-series CPU means that you're going to be able to overclock it, and with something like a Hyper 212 Evo, you're going to be able to take it to about 4.0 gigahertz, which is going to help you a lot in some of the more, recent titles and in emulators. Actually, if you're the kind of guy that likes to run Wii emulators, PS2 emulators, you're really going to want an overclocked CPU, and this does the trick with the Hyper 212 Evo. And as far as gaming goes, with the graphics card we got, the CPU is going to be able to eat up any game that's on the market now and coming out. Games like Witcher 3, Battlefield Hardline, games like that is going to be no problem. Obviously, Call of Duty, stuff like that, it's going to be no problem, especially games like Call of Duty. I mean, those games take nothing to run. But games like even higher-end games like Battlefield Hardline, Witcher 3 that's coming out early next year, Metro Last Light, those games are going to be perfectly fine, with this CPU alongside the GPU that we got. For the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte GAZ97X-SLI. This is an LJ1150 motherboard. It's Z97. Very good motherboard. SATA 6 gigabit per second, USB 3, all those good features. You're going to be able to go for an SLI or a Crossfire configuration. 4 RAM slots, so upgradability as far as the RAM is concerned is just loaded with features for about 120 bucks. Really good motherboard, and it's from Gigabyte. They're, pretty world-renowned as motherboard manufacturers. They've got a really good warranty policy, so I really like their motherboards, and this one seems like a no-brainer for around $125. Moving on to the RAM of the build, I went with G.Skill Ripjaw Series 8GB, two 4GB sticks running at 1600 MHz. It's $80, pretty pricey for 8GB of RAM. You're getting about a gig per $10, so, kind of expensive. Like I said, the motherboard does have 4 RAM slots, so if you do in the future want to go for 16 gigs of RAM, that's going to be an option open to you. But right now, 8GB is perfectly fine for games. Hell, most titles still only recommend 4GB. Games like Splinter Cell Blacklist, AC4, a lot of titles, even games like Battlefield 4 can run on 4GB. 8GB is really that sweet spot right now that if you are building, one of these higher end builds, 8GB is definitely what you're going to want to go with. No reason to go for anything higher right now. It just doesn't make any sense, but we do have the option to go for something higher in the future since, like I said, the motherboard does have 4 RAM slots, so you guys are good as far as that's concerned. For the graphics card of the build, I went with the Sapphire Radeon R9 280X. This is a 3GB graphics card, and man, is this a value deal right now. It's $299 after, actually, there's also a mail-in rebate that goes with it. So after the mail-in rebate, it's like 280 bucks. And this is better than most of the NVIDIA comparative graphics cards like the 770 and things of that nature. Compares relatively similar to those, but the real kicker with this graphics card is that you're getting 3 games off AMD's gold tier of games. Now, these aren't just some, garbage games, 3-year-old, 4-year-old games. Games like Witcher 3, excuse me. Witcher 2 is pretty old, but Witcher 3, that's a game that's not even out yet. Thief, that's a pretty recent release. I thought it was in a good game, but it's a recent release. Murdered Soul Suspect, that just came out like a month ago, and there's a lot of games to pick from, so just check it out. There's a lot of good games to pick from, a lot of AAA titles, and really, NVIDIA's not really offering anything that's relatively similar to this. I mean, with a couple of the graphics cards, you're getting a free copy of Watch Dogs, and in my opinion, Watch Dogs was an extremely disappointing game, so in my opinion, this is a way better value, a $300 graphics card, and 3 games up to the value of $150. It's just crazy, in my opinion. AMD's really kicking it as far as graphics cards are concerned. They're kind of slacking behind with the CPUs, but their graphics card, man, as far as price to performance and these value deals go, they're just killing it. As far as the graphics card's performance goes, 1080p gaming is not going to be a problem for this. Even if you do get a 1440p monitor, this card has 3 GB of video buffer, so even that is going to be, relatively easy to run, some of the higher end games like Metro and Witcher 2, Battlefield 4. Those are going to be a little harder to run at 1440p, but at 1080p, this is just going to demolish every game, and you do have the option to go for a higher resolution. A couple games like Witcher 2 with Uber sampling, I mean, nothing can run that, so you guys got to keep your expectations in line. But yeah, games like Crysis 2, Crysis 3, you're going to be able to run those, fairly high settings, if not maxed out. Moving on to the power supply, I went with the XFX Core Edition Pro 650 watt power supply. Now keep in mind, if you go with this power supply that I'm recommending, you're not going to be able to go for a Crossfire configuration. If you do want to go for a Crossfire configuration in the future, which isn't recommended in my opinion, but if that is something you want to do, pick up like a 750 or 850 watt. That should get you by just fine if you want a Crossfire. In my opinion, crossfiring is not something that's that sufficient. I've explained it many times, so if you guys want to know, just ask me in the comments and I'll explain it to you, but won't get too in deep with it in this video. But yeah, a 650 watt is going to do just fine in this build. The i5 4670K is only 84 watts, and the 280X for a fairly high-end graphics card is fairly power efficient, so a 650 watts is going to have enough power to spare, and you're actually going to have some headroom to work with if you want to add more graphics card. Just keep in mind, you're not going to be able to go for a Crossfire configuration with just a 650 watt. With that being said, let's move on to the hard drive and the SSD. For the hard drive, I went with the Western Digital WD Blue. This is $60, just a solid hard drive. This is going to be your storage drive where you're going to keep all your games and, your movies, your pictures, all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to have the SSD, which is going to be for your OS and your key applications. The Samsung 840 EVO 120 gigabyte SSD. I was really shocked to look at the price of this. It's only $90 for a really solid SSD. I actually have a Samsung series SSD myself, and it works flawlessly. Now, on the surface, an SSD seems like a bad value. It's only 120 gigabytes and it's $90. Seems kind of expensive, but guys, trust me, an SSD just helps your PC overall so much better, especially if your OS is on it. Just helps transition between application to application so much quicker. SSDs are really good in a budget like this because it just complements the whole build so much. It's not a necessity, but for all of you guys that, don't think highly of SSDs, you've probably never have used one, because that's what I used to think, a couple years back. But then when I got my hands on my first SSD, man, did it help my PC out so much. I love SSDs. They're awesome. And in this budget, we could fit one in. And trust me, guys, if you're the kind of person that have only used hard drives and then you jumped onto an SSD like I did, it'll completely blow you away. Booting up your computer in 8 seconds is one of the coolest things ever. And, transitioning seamlessly between applications, it's just really great. I highly recommend it. Finally, for the case of the build, I went with the Cooler Master Half 912, case I recommend often. It's a fairly good mid-tower case, and it's fairly cheap at about $50 after a mail-in rebate. A couple other options, you can go for the Rose Bowl Challenger. You want to get something more expensive, the Fractal Design Define R4 is a really cool case, but it's fairly expensive, so keep that in mind. The Half 922, Half 932, those are variations of this case, a little bit more beefied up. But the Half 912 is going to get the job done just fine for $50, and I'm more about the interior than the exterior, so I don't like to spend, well over, $70, $80 on a case, but that's just my personal preference. I gave you some other options there, so thanks for watching this video, guys. Remember, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.